Joining us now, a major for the D.C. National Guard and a senior advisor for the Council of American Security, Major Adam DeMarco. He was a senior National Guard officer on the scene in Lafayette Square on June the 1st when peaceful protesters were forcibly removed prior to President Trump's photo op at St. John's Church. Thank you so much for being with us, Major. Can you give us some background on what happened that day?
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me, and good morning. In terms of what happened on June 1st, I'm not at liberty to discuss that, given that there are current investigations ongoing. However, my testimony under oath is in the congressional record, and I stand behind it.
And so, Major, I think we can talk generally about the things that you've grown up seeing and you've observed in your adult life about the importance between the separation of politics and the military. I remember looking at that scene and being horrified, not only that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs was walking over there, but the SecDef was there as well. Can you talk about how those sort of activities and also, and of course, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs notably has apologized and was very forthright about it. But can you talk about how that mixing of politics and the United States military undermines our men and women in uniform?
Well, certainly. Obviously, if you are a federal employee or in the active duty military, you abide by the Hatch Act. And that is something that's extremely important both for our civil servants and our men and women in uniform. And the reason being is because every 4 years we have either a peaceful transition of power or a continuity of government. When we start mixing those two, then we start getting into what George Washington really feared in his farewell address, and that is the partisan politics and the vitriol that we see today in America's political climate.
Major DeMarco, it's Willie Geist. We really appreciate you being on this morning. In your congressional testimony, in case people didn't see it, and you may not want to say it again here today, you said it was deeply disturbing what you saw that day. You said there was a use of excessive force that you witnessed with your own eyes in that park. What can you share with us about the ways some of your colleagues, other members of the Guard, other members of the military who were doing their jobs out there, when you talk among them, what was the general feeling about that day?
You know, that day, certainly, and I talked about it during the testimony, or during the hearing, excuse me. A lot of our soldiers were disturbed, but I will tell you this, that the Department of Defense and the D.C. National Guard has been incredible in terms of providing support and also talking about it writ large. But as I'm here today, I'm really here to talk about the Council on American Security and kind of the way forward. Because what we're seeing in the current administration is going to have generational effects going into the future.
And what do you mean by that specifically, Major DeMarco?
So the recent decision to start pulling people out of Germany, is very troubling in that we are seeing the continuous undermining, degradation and vilifying of our international alliances and partnerships, specifically within Germany. Without going into the composition and disposition of forces across Europe, if we are starting to move people around in Europe, not only is that a signal to our European allies, but it's also a signal to our adversaries that America is essentially abdicating the mantle of leadership that we have been, holding up since the end of World War II.
We talked yesterday about Harry Truman with Richard Haass. We were talking about the 75th anniversary of Truman's decision to drop the atomic bomb, but also Richard Haass said that Harry Truman was the most successful foreign policy president in the post-war world, in part because what you're talking about, in part because he built alliances with a broken Germany, because from Harry Truman to George H.W. Bush, they fought a Cold War against the Soviet Union that stopped Soviet expansionism and actually unified Germany. I'm wondering if you talked about adversaries. I'm wondering whether you see what's happening in Germany right now as undermining everything that 9 American presidents between Harry Truman and George H.W. Bush did, and actually doing it in a way that actually accrues to the benefit of Vladimir Putin and Russia.
Absolutely. You're 100% spot on with that assessment. Our greatest existential threat as a country It doesn't come from violent extremist networks or lone wolf actors. It's from the continuous degradation and undermining of our shared democratic values. Those values which started with the Marshall Plan post-World War II and the Truman administration and continue up through the 9 presidents, as you said. Vladimir Putin is looking at this as an opportunity to enhance and increase his presence across Western Europe.
Major Mike Barnicle has a question for you, Mike.
Major, on that day, June 1st, when did you become aware that the order was given to move against the protesters, or against the crowd, actually? And were you aware of who it was issued to, who gave it?
Mike, appreciate the question. Once again, due to the current investigations and the pending litigations, I'm not at liberty to discuss, but my congressional testimony on the record certainly hits on that.
All right, Major in the D.C. National Guard, Adam DeMarco, who was there in the square that day. Major, thanks so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.